From MZ Studios in Dallas, Texas, you're listening to the Tennis Revolution podcast.
Oh, freedom. Finally, freedom. I got to do a podcast, and there is no Corey. I wish I had claps on my laptop soundboard here, but I don't. And not only did I get rid of Corey for the week, not only is he in the Big Easy for New Year's, so he probably won't even make it back alive, but I replaced him with somebody way better, I hope. So we have in studio a jack of all trades, or a Blair of all trades, if you will, Blair Henley. How you doing?
Hey, Brian. That was quite the buildup. I'm feeling the pressure over here.
You're sitting in the Corey chair. There is no pressure. No pressure.
Well, thanks for inviting me. This is fun.
Yeah, not at all. I ran across you in about 17 different places, online, in magazines, wherever. So you do literally everything. And you play college tennis, is that right?
That is correct. I played for Rice University. Go Owls.
Now, did you pick them because of the mascot? Come on now. Let's be honest.
The Owls were a plus.
All right. I like it.
It was a plus. But I have to say, for me, I hadn't even heard of Rice when the coach called. But I was like, well, is it warm in Houston? Because the other schools I was looking at were in the Northeast, and I was not, I'm a Florida girl. Wasn't thinking I could do those Northeastern winters. And he's like, yeah, it's blazing hot in Houston. Come on down. And I went on my recruiting trip, loved it. And
there you have it.
There you go.
Well, and I didn't ask you if you picked him based on the mascot because you're a girl, I swear. Because I have never, the job at Richmond has come open before, and I've never applied for it because I don't want a whole rack of spiders in my closet on all my shirts. It'd creep me out. So there you have it.
I've never thought of that, but that's a great point.
What a horrible place to work to come in. I mean, it's a great school.
Right.
It's a great academic school. And, I'm from Virginia originally, so it's in my home state. But spiders, come on. Really?
Got to stay away from that for sure.
Now, did I hear that Kyrgios got bit by a spider?
Spider bite on Christmas Day, apparently. Randomly, I was just emailing with his brother, Christos, who runs the Nick Kyrgios Foundation. I just did a story on them this summer for the Tennis Magazine Heroes issue. And so I just put that in an email to Christos saying, hey, I hope you guys had a great Christmas, minus that spider bite.
That's the wrong place to get bit by. He's in Australia right now. I mean, he's from there, obviously, but they're also
right where everything is poisonous.
Oh, man.
Everything is venomous and can kill you in Australia.
Yeah, I want to go to Australia, but I'm scared to. I'm scared to. There's no chance. What if I would just stayed on the beach? Like, literally, not a house on the beach. I mean, my feet on the sand day and night. Not in the water.
Stay away from the water.
Not back in the brush, right on the beach.
That would be good.
No
Stock up on your sunscreen.
Poisonous sand crabs, nothing like that?
Not that I know of, but I do not call myself an expert on the wildlife.
So now you are a Rice Owl.
That's right.
And you decided, you know what? Just because I played tennis doesn't mean I'm sick of it. Because a lot of people finish college and they've had enough.
That is correct. I still loved it when I graduated. It was actually kind of a hard transition for me to kind of figure out what was next. I thought for a while that I was going to play some, low-level ITF tournaments, see how that went. Decided not to when I looked at the cost-benefit analysis of that. Was pretty sure I wasn't going to be in the top 100. I was being realistic with that and thought, okay, well, I coached for a while. My dad's a tennis pro, and so I coached for a little bit after that, was the volunteer assistant at Rice for a little while, and made the transition. I worked as development, I don't exactly know what you would call it, at a brand new tennis club in Houston. A lot of Swedish tennis players. Nicholas Kroon was one of the guys who was opening the club, and so they knew tennis, loved tennis, and asked me to come on. I learned a lot, and then I got married to a baseball player.
Baseball. Baseball.
Yeah, I know.
I tell all of my players, if you're going to stay away from one team on this campus, It's baseball.
The baseball
But we
team.
don't have lacrosse. That's
Trouble.
why.
All right. That's
See, if we
fair.
had lacrosse, they'd be staying away from lacrosse. But it's baseball.
Baseball, yeah. So we traveled.
Now, did he play at Rice? Is that where you met him?
Played at Rice, met at Rice, got married. He was drafted by the Cardinals organization.
Boo.
And
I'm a Pirates fan.
That's right. You're the Cardinals.
The Pirates suck way too bad for me to have any rivals, though, so it doesn't really matter.
Well, I got to tell you, when you're in the minor leagues of the baseball world, you're not really attached to any team.
True.
So it's, you kind of just play and hope that things work out for you. He ended up having Tommy John surgery, didn't really
Ouch.
recover well from that, and, had to make the transition to real life too. So
Yeah, that's a wild scene. That whole minor league system is a wild scene.
it is, it's where you are at what time, and for some guys it works out, and for some equally talented guys it doesn't. So.
Yeah, it's really, yeah. In the immortal words of the best baseball manager the Texas Rangers ever had, that's how baseball go.
Yep.
I need to add that to my soundboard. I really do. I have a soundboard, and it's kind of pitiful, really, because I don't know how to use it because I'm not a professional broadcaster like you. But some of my favorite ones are.
Do it live. I'll write it, and we'll do it live.
That might be the best.
That's fantastic.
So baseball. So you got dragged all over the country.
I moved a lot, and it was great that I was able to teach tennis because I was one of the few baseball wives that worked. Because
we're like gypsies.
Yeah.
We can do what. Yeah.
I mean, I would walk up, and female pros are harder to come by, and so when I was like, "Hey, played college tennis. You looking for someone?"
And they
would hire me sight unseen. They wouldn't even see me hit.
Wow.
They'd be like, "You're hired," which was great.
And they try to put you the little kids every time, wouldn't they?
I did a lot of little kids, but then they found out that I could hit a little, and
right.
I got a variety of different lessons through that.
That is helpful, having that kind of nomadic job. Where are some of the places you went? I don't mean like, we were on the South Beach of what. I mean, no, I'm talking about the worst place. I'm talking about the places, the armpits. Where'd you end up?
Man, started off in Batavia, New York.
Never heard of it?
Yep, close to Buffalo. It's a small little town. We were in Surprise, Arizona for the Arizona Fall League. Springfield, Missouri, which was... it was still one of the best places I've ever been. Loved the people there. Got to play. They have a world team tennis team in Springfield.
Yeah.
Got to play one match for the Springfield Lasers.
Cool. Who'd you play against?
I played, it was against...
Not the team, because nobody cares about the teams.
It was Asia, so it was doubles. I played with Shani Skeppers from South Africa, and we played against Asia Muhammad, and I'm going to forget her partner's name, who was also a fill-in, which worked in our favor.
Right.
I'll never forget it. I owe it all to Vanya King, who made it... I think she made it to maybe the semis of Wimbledon doubles and couldn't make it back in time. So thanks to Vanya, they were desperate.
She had a good run.
And they were like, well, who else is female and can hit a decent tennis ball? So I got to play, and it was one of the most fun memories. We got to throw out the first pitch at my husband's game across town. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and you probably had more people in the stands for your match than he did for his games.
I'm telling you, though, they being in Missouri and being in the Cardinals organization, there was a whole lot of support. The fans there were great.
Sense.
So we loved living there. Palm Beach County, they have a team there as well. So yeah, we moved several times.
Wow. Quite an experience, though.
It was a lot. I mean, it was fun. Looking back, we could fit all our belongings in our car and wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, I'm also happy to have furniture though now.
Sure. So how long were you married prior to this happening?
So he played for a year. We got married, and then we traveled for 3 years.
So you signed on knowing the deal.
Yeah, I knew the deal.
Good for you.
Yeah, so it was an adventure.
I was going to say, an adventure at the beginning of the marriage. I mean, that's got to be, the ultimate test. It's like, wow, we power through this one. We're going to make it.
Right. We had to, going through the end of a career just a few years in, and it's kind of, it can be a painful process. But it was good. I mean, I think we both look back on it fondly. So.
Yeah, sure. Except it didn't end the way he wanted it, obviously.
It could have ended better, but I'm thankful that he made the transition to real life probably much better than I would have.
Sure.
So I probably would have taken it. He's very much a go with the flow kind of guy.
Right. Now, what was he? Tommy John? So he's a pitcher?
No, outfield.
Gotcha.
Which, if he were a pitcher, it might have been better. But he was an outfielder, and there are a lot of those. So by the time he made it back, there are just a lot of good outfielders, and so he really had a very short time to play well. Didn't play great right off the bat. No pun intended. And
so he should have got into the Pirate system because they suck. And you could probably play for the Pirates right now.
Maybe that should be the next thing on my resume. But yeah, moved back to Houston after that. He still had to finish school, which is one of the tougher aspects of ending that career. Is you're like, oh, I have one more year of school left. So moved back to Houston, got hired by Tennis Now. Which is a tennis news site, but that also has a strong video presence on YouTube.
Right.
And that kind of started it all for me. I got to cover Wimbledon with them. That was maybe the third tournament I had ever covered was Wimbledon. I applied for credentials. I didn't even tell my boss. I just applied for credentials thinking, yeah, right. There's no way Wimbledon is going to approve little old Tennis Now. And they did. And I went to my boss and I was like, so hey... I applied for credentials. They actually said yes. I think it's going to be great for the site.
Wow!
And to their credit, my boss's credit, they sent me.
That's fun.
And yeah, met a lot of people. And the tennis world is a small world.
Sure.
Whether it's college tennis or professional tennis, and the media side of things is even smaller because there are so few people who are. Have jobs that sustain them to where they can travel all year long and cover the sport. It's too bad.
That's exactly the question I was going to ask you. You said you did some tennis writing. I didn't know we had those in America. And I'm kind of kidding, but I'm kind of not because no one cares about our sport. I mean, we're about to get passed by esports, by the way.
I know. It's. I was just talking about esports last night. I have a friend, actually, who they own a team. And so I've learned a whole lot about esports through that. Naomi Osaka is also a huge gamer, which is kind of there's the tennis esports crossover right there is a Naomi Osaka.
Yeah, but they never play sports on esports.
Right. It's let's see who we can. I mean, they're not all shooter games, but yes, I agree. It's a whole new world, that's for sure.
Well, and granted, every human being that plays tennis that's a junior age now, they all play video games. I got that, but it's just, to me, it's one more avenue one more activity that can get kids off the court.
Totally.
Take them away from the court, which in the position we're in, I think in America, that's dicey at best. I mean, that's going to hurt us.
It's not a plus for sports in general, really, because it's not exactly sitting in front of your monitor and playing.
Yeah, but I mean, baseball's going to be fine. Football, basketball will be fine. Even hockey will be fine. It's too cold in Canada to play video games, so they have to play hockey.
Well, and you know what I call baseball? Organized rest. So.
Yeah, exactly. They can play video games while they're playing baseball.
Exactly. But yeah.
Don't tell your husband I said that. He's
won't.
Probably a big, strong athlete, and he's going to beat me up because I'm just a tennis player. I'm the video gamer of sports, being a tennis player. Not that I'm calling esports nerds.
Nah, I get it. But no, you're exactly right. It's tough. Tennis it's an uphill battle, but there are so many rabid tennis fans out there, and that's the cool thing about the internet is you reach people all over the world.
Yeah.
And when I was doing instruction videos for Tennis Now, which that's kind of a funny story in itself, they just wanted instruction content, and I was like, well, why don't I try to shoot some? It's way harder to try to find someone, bring them in, find time to shoot. So I just did it, and I still have people. I mean, I was just in Singapore for the WTA finals, and a woman from Guam walked up to me and said, I love watching your instruction videos. And these are videos I shot 5 years ago. And I still have people regularly who come up to me at tournaments who say, it's been great. It's been so helpful. And it's been one of the most rewarding things really in my tennis career that I've done. And so thanks to the beauty of the internet, there are rabid tennis fans out there, not only those who want to learn how to play and who can appreciate the value of it on the court, but people who just really love Novak Djokovic or, Roger Federer. He's in another category, but you know what I mean? They're out there.
No, he's not. Don't even get us started on that on this pod. So
you don't think Roger Federer is, in his own little...
No.
Interesting. All right.
Oh, God.
fan wise.
We're going.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
In terms of people who just absolutely would live and die for Roger Federer.
He's
on his own level.
He's in that because he used to do commercials with Tiger Woods, and and he's a LeBron or MJ.
Correct.
Michael Jordan for the children today. Don't know who MJ is. Of course. Yeah, he's a whole nother level. One of the reasons we started this, or I started and then brought Corey on board, was just to talk about American tennis because it's just, we're so far down the list on sports. I mean, lawn darts. The only reason they're not ahead of us is because they kill children. Remember lawn darts where you toss those sharp things up and try to land them in the circle in your yard?
I never played it myself. My parents probably kept that far away from. I would have used it to stab my brother, probably.
But I mean, so if that still existed, we would be behind that. That's why I kind of was trying to tell a joke when you're a tennis writer. I didn't know we had those because I hear podcasts or read other things from all over the place. Europe certainly is popular. Asia's, just blowing up now with numbers. And, how are we doing in terms of what you're seeing out there working in the industry? I mean, are we just kind of steady as she goes? Are we going down? Are we going up? What's your thought on that? And I mean, participation specifically, not obviously we know our men's tennis sucks and women's tennis is good. That's clear at the pro level. But in terms of just overall participation and the health of our game in America.
Well, where we are right now is certainly not for lack of trying on the part of the USTA. They've spent hundreds of thousands on several different programs throughout the last decade and even before that. And now we have the NetGen. And one thing I do get to see at a lot of the bigger tournaments, they have these NetGen demos where they have these little kids come out and, they have the adaptive courts and the smaller nets and the softer balls, which initially I'll admit I wasn't a huge believer in that. I was like, come on now. We all played with regular balls and we were just fine. But in terms of getting more people to play, not necessarily getting more great players, but in terms of getting more people to pick up a racket and enjoy tennis, I think it's a positive thing.
I 100% agree with you because I was the same way early on. And I was in college. I wasn't teaching kids or anything, but just looking at it, not really giving it much thought, I was the same way. Why do we need to do this? We can just. But I think it does do one thing really, really well. And that's keep kids interested because they're having fun. Because if you hit one ball and chase it to the corner and go get it and then hit it again and you chase it to the other corner, you run out of attention span with little kids pretty quick. But with all the different shorter rackets, the softer balls, and the short nets, it definitely gets them interested because they can have success for sure. I mean, I've got an 11-year-old and that it works for her and her friends.
Yeah, well, that's great to hear. And that's what I've seen in terms of, being out on the court when I was teaching. I mean, it's been a while since I've taught regularly, but I think that's a plus. And I think there's a lot of money coming from the USTA, which is great. I'll be very interested to see how this new ITF transition tour affects the juniors coming up because and that it's a whole. I mean, we could have a whole podcast just talking about.
Well, you and I could, but nobody else would listen.
Probably,
maybe
it's you're definitely. I think John Wertheim, who just did a podcast on this with Jeff Grant, I think he used the term "in the weeds."
Yeah,
it is definitely, but I think it could potentially have a really negative impact on American tennis specifically because it's going to put a premium on playing ITF events as juniors because those players who play ITF events as juniors are going to get their spots reserved in the pro transition tour for people who have ITF junior rankings.
Right.
And, right now you can have some of the best USTA tournaments are on par with a lot of ITF tournaments.
But they won't well, we don't have a lot of ITFs. They left us to our own devices. They figured the USTA and the amount of players they have is big enough.
Right.
They have enough money. They're organized enough. They're not selling points like some small little country in the middle of nowhere or whatever. And so for so long, we've been left to our own devices, and we've only had a few ITFs here. But, I mean, that could really crush the USTA.
Right, because
juniors.
It's going to – the best players are going to say, well, hey, if I want a chance to – turn pro, I better work on my ITF ranking, which is also going to mean you have to be homeschooled. There's not going to be a choice.
Well, unless we start just letting a lot of ITFs come in.
True.
If you can maximize the amount of tournaments that you can get to within day or two drive, then
That's
can
a good point.
miss a couple days. Because you're right. As of now, what a disaster. I mean, they have to travel all over. They can't.
Right.
They can't get it done in North America.
Also, you better have money.
That too.
Which tennis is already an expensive sport.
Right.
And now you're going to have to be traveling to, I don't know, Peru to play
Right.
play an ITF event there. I just wonder what effect that's going to have down the road in 3 or 4 years.
Well, here's the other thing I worry about. So what we're talking about is right now, if you want to go professional, there are several avenues to get there. One of them is the wild card system. So tournaments have wild cards, and if you're good enough on paper, ranked high enough, and they want to give opportunities to those players, then a tournament, usually encouraged by the governing body that runs that tournament, i.e. the USTA, twisting your arm, will work out a deal, get wild cards to the top Americans. I ran a 50K and men and a 15K also back years ago, and there was some collaboration with the USTA. I'll put it that way.
I'm shocked.
Yeah,
Shocked.
Collaboration. They collaborated me into picking who they wanted me to pick for part of it. I went my own way for some other stuff. But anyway, and that's, a needle in a haystack for a player. The other way is to play your way into it through a long, arduous path, but it's as free market as it gets. If you can do it, you will do it. If you beat people, then you will continue to move up the ladder, and nobody but other tennis players playing tennis can stop you. Mm-hmm. Now it doesn't look like it's going to be that way.
No, it's as of January 1st. We're right there. Yeah.
And here's the worst thing I fear is that there will be some kind of backdoor dealings with organizations, i.e. the USTA, and now they're going to have an even bigger role in being gatekeepers, which if you're in a small country like Romania, obviously they have corruption and all kinds of trouble because their number one player can't stand the federation. She's had issues. I don't know any in depth about that, but there's obviously some bad blood there. But, like the USTA, nobody even thinks twice about giving them benefit of the doubt that they're going to do the right thing for the players and all this kind of stuff. And that's really another big reason we started this podcast is because nobody talks bad about the USTA that I know of, and they should. A lot.
Well, I think it's just good. I think everybody needs to be examined, no matter who you are. So it's, not necessarily that I'm looking to talk bad about the USTA. but I mean, just like you said, it's good to ask questions, and transparency is good. And that is not always, and it's tennis has the most the oh gosh, what word is there other than incest? But they're just
it's a lot like boxing where you have so many different, or boxing used to be. Does anybody even care about boxing anymore?
Sure,
I don't.
Conflicts of interest abound.
But yeah, because they have so many different entities that quote unquote control the game, and so it ends up causing the conflicts of interest for sure. Right. And the people that get hurt, particularly in this new scenario where they're taking away, a ton of players that are not going to be professional anymore. I mean, the whole system changes, and it's not. I don't think it's a meritocracy as much anymore.
Ooh, yeah, I mean, it makes me so sad to think. I saw a tweet today, and I can't remember who tweeted it, but on January 1st, 500 women's players, and I think it was 1,250 men's players who had professional rankings are no longer going to have professional rankings as of January 1st because there's going to be a cutoff at 750 on the ATP side and on the WTA side, and it is so hard to get a professional ranking. So I can't imagine feeling like, I went through all that to finally get my name in those rankings. And it's gone, and it's not going to be easy to get it back because you have to. I mean, the stepping stones are further and further apart. It seems.
Sure. Yeah, and you can't rely on the wild card system.
Right.
Because, again, that's a needle in a haystack. And if this ITF situation happens and we don't get more ITF tournaments, that's shutting out a lot more players. And ultimately, I'm a college coach, so I'm selfish. I'm going to talk about me.
Sure.
It's going to ultimately hurt American college, not college tennis, because the level of college tennis in and of itself will improve.
Right. Because
the problem is it'll be a lot more. Yeah. All those internationals that are no
more
longer
than there already are.
Yeah, exactly. It's gonna be a bigger influx into college tennis, which will help Division III because then all the Americans will come down so the level gets better top to bottom, but not for us. And one of my contentions is that if we looked more like basketball or football. And not hockey and baseball are a little different. You would know way more than me for the baseball, but the minor league system is different. It changes kind of the dynamic. But the stepping stone to the NFL and NBA for 99% of basketball players and all the football players is college. Mm-hmm. And if we had that, then our college system would be better.
Sure.
And I think ultimately, over time, American tennis would be better because it'd be a bigger incentive. I don't think anybody, they have to make the decision, college or not, pretty early in their junior career, or what they're looking to try to do. And college is the fallback and not not the choice. Where if it was the other way around, I think that benefits. This takes us the opposite direction for American tennis players.
Yeah, which is really too bad. And even for me, looking back, if the system was what it's going to be like starting on January 1st with this new ITF transition tour, I certainly never would have played ITF events post-college because I did it, I can't remember if we talked about this actually on the podcast or before we started recording, but I didn't necessarily think I was going to be, top 100 in the world.
Right.
But I played those ITF events, or, the low-level 10,000s because I love to compete. I was curious. I just wanted to see how I would do.
Put yourself up against those that might make it or see where you stack up. Sure.
And it's an incredible opportunity if you have some financial backing to travel and to see different places, to meet different people, and and you're kind of roughing it. I mean, it's really, for me, I found it a kind of a character building experience.
Sure,
I was in a hotel room with 3 or 4 or sometimes 5 other girls, and we're playing each other the next day. And I don't regret. I didn't play for a long time after college, but I don't regret doing that. And I loved having the opportunity to do that. There was no barrier to entry at that point, and now there will be. Yeah. It's going to be very difficult. And plus, would I have wanted to go play those tournaments if they weren't classified as professional?
Right.
Probably not. And you also wonder, are people going to want to host tournaments if they can't market it as a pro tournament? I don't think they will.
No, they're not. They're not. Did you qualify for any tournaments?
I did.
What? You got some points.
I did have some points.
Yeah. How many did you have?
I think I had 3.
Oh, I had 6.
Oh, man.
In doubles, though.
Congratulations. I had a ranking in doubles. Okay, if we're talking doubles.
After we hang up the podcast, I'll tell you how I got those 6 points. I didn't buy them.
Well, that's good.
So you did qualify. So you had some points.
I did.
So the barrier to entry should be that you're not good enough to sustain getting into main draws. So you started out, you qualify for some. If you would have gotten deep into a bunch in a row, you would have qualified to get directly in. Then you would have started making more money, not enough to survive. And then, that's how it works. It even harder than that back in the day, because you're not old enough for this, but they had the satellite system where they had a grouping of 4 tournaments, and you had to play the first 3 to qualify for the final one. And so that was a barrier to entry, but it was a level ability results-based barrier, not an artificial, let's just,
not an institutional barrier.
That's a good way to put it, not an institutional barrier.
Yeah.
And this artificial institutional barrier, I think it's arbitrary. I don't understand what the benefit is. What are they claiming the benefit is?
I think they're thinking that it's supposedly going to cut down on the match fixing issue, which it remains to be seen how
is that possible?
If you and
I right now turn off the mics and we decide, all right, we're going to play an exhibition tomorrow. No, because it's going to be like 40 degrees tomorrow. But we're going to play an exhibition. You're going to win 4-4. You and I could make that happen pretty easily. And no one outside this studio, after we turn off the mics, of course, would know. There's no way to stop match fixing. No chance.
I'm interested, and then that's another thing as far as transparency goes, that there's the Tennis Integrity Unit, which I'm not exactly sure what they do, but they're the ones who are catching these people. But I mean, I would love to know. But again, I guess you can't give away your methods, but we don't really know what's happening behind the scenes to catch these people. So anyway, who knows? Is it going to help match fixing? I don't know. We'll see. But they also claim that it's going to be cheaper for people to host the futures events, like the 15K events on the men's and women's side. They're going to shorten the length of the tournament, so it's less expensive. But again, even if it's less expensive, is somebody going to want to pay that much, thousands and thousands to? Junior
tournaments are shorter and they make money.
Yeah,
these are you have to raise money for these tournaments. If you run a 15K, you're looking about 20 to 25,000 you have to come up with.
Yeah.
And now what you're doing is you're basically trying to come up with 25K to run an adult tournament.
Right.
That's all it is. It's just an adult tournament.
Yeah. And even if it's cheaper, even if it's $10,000 cheaper, are people going to want to say, hey, if you can't say it's pro tennis, I wonder who's going to care. And not only I don't think the fans going to care, I don't think the players are really going to care. Because, again, unless they feel like they really have a shot to make it to the big leagues.
Right.
So who knows what's going to happen. I'm interested to see. I want to reserve judgment, but there is part of me that's sad thinking like, oh, man, that great experience that I had, I wouldn't be able to have that now.
So I ran I can't remember which level this particular person showed up at. So I ran a 15K men's futures, and then later I ran a 50K challenger. And this is years ago. And we had a guy that came into town. He lost his qualifying match 0-0 in 15 minutes.
Okay. And
I had one of the pros was staying with me because, you house and everybody, there's no money. So hotels are a luxury at best. And so I house one of these guys. And so we were talking, and he was saying, yeah, that guy goes to every tournament. And he was just literally just there to pick up women, to go to the player events, to say he was a player because he was in the tournament. And he's never won a match. I don't know if he's ever won a game, but he just had enough money. Or his parents had enough money. He was a young guy, whatever, good-looking fellow. But now that's not.
This would prevent that.
This is not a great scenario. But I would rather have that scenario than have a scenario where people that might have a chance to make it
just
get
feel
that
like they
chance.
want to give up.
And now you will literally miss out on players that would have made it, like Stevie Johnson, people like that would come out of college. Who wasn't ready to turn pro, I guess, in his opinion. I didn't know him as a junior, but him and his coach and whoever, he didn't think, okay, I could go pro out of high school, so let me go to college. And obviously he's made it. He's self-sufficient as a player, which is, to me, that's what making it is.
Right.
Not being Federer. That's not making it.
Right.
But being able to afford to be on the plus side in your checkbook when you're done traveling and all that. And who knows? So this system, he'd be a teaching pro. No offense to teaching pros, I was one. But he'd be coaching tennis. He wouldn't be playing for a living.
You never, yeah.
Might not be. He might not be.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be more of a challenge, especially for the players who decide to play college tennis because they're not going to have that springboard of the ITF junior ranking.
Right.
So it's going to be tougher for them for sure.
Well, who cares about players that don't make it?
That's right. Who cares?
Let's talk about players that have made it when we come back.
It's time to join the revolution. Go to our website, tennisrevolutionpodcast.com, to get the latest episodes, email us your questions and comments, or give us show ideas.
All right, we're back. So let's talk about real players. Who cares about the ones struggling out there, trying to make it,
I mean,
living off their parents' money all over the country, carousing for women, acting like they're real players.
oh goodness.
I do know the guy's name. I've remembered it for 17 years now. It's just a funny story, but I won't say it on the podcast. So let's talk a little bit about. So you are a tennis fan, right? So
I am.
you are interested in the beginning of the season, or as
Yes.
Corey and I like to call it on this podcast, the continuation of the season that never ends.
Yes.
Now, give me a percentage of your work life that's dedicated to covering professional tennis, like on the road.
On the road. So this past year, I traveled to, I believe, 8 tournaments.
That's not bad.
So I was, well, I mean, it adds up though. I mean,
Sure.
I was traveling, I think I traveled almost 100 days. Last year, I also covered Roland Garros social media from home. I don't get to do a ton of.
Did you put up a picture of like the French Open behind you and took selfies like you were there?
Well, I got to do it on site in 2016, and so the last 2 years I've gotten to do it from home, which is not quite as exciting, but it is more comfortable.
Yes.
I'm in my house slippers and comfy clothes, sweats mostly, in my upstairs bedroom. So it's definitely more comfortable. But yeah, Roland Garros, that was such a great experience. I covered it once for Tennis Now, and then was back to work on their social media team. So I don't get to do a ton of the day-to-day coverage in terms of, who won this match, and
Right.
here are some quotes from the post-match.
Yeah, but
press
that's
conference.
good because you haven't. What I was getting to is you actually have an off season then.
I do, yes. So
Because players and people that cover the players do not.
it is
It's
rough. It's so funny though, because now that things are kicking off again, people are, I am a member. They call it Tennis Twitter on Twitter. I would
Right.
say I'm a proud member of Tennis Twitter, and people are starving for tennis content. And
That's
I'm like,
crazy.
guys, it's been 6 weeks. It hasn't been that long, and it's great. Like, I love that people want more tennis, but
Right.
it's funny because we're so used to having tennis all the time. Whenever you want to watch tennis is on somewhere. And so when you don't have it for 6 weeks, it's like, I mean, what are you doing with yourself?
Yeah. Well, we've had men's tennis here in America, not women, for the last year because the TV deal or whatever the WTA did to us
Yes.
was a disaster.
Yes.
So I'm excited for that. That's sort of what's renewed for me because I didn't do the WTATV.com or whatever they have. I didn't do that because I was already doing Tennis Channel Plus, which, do you ever do any work for Tennis Channel? I won't talk bad about them.
I have not. I have.
All right. Well, Tennis Channel
But
Plus
I
sucks.
love. Yeah.
It sucks.
It was rough. It
I
was
want
rough for you.
if I'm paying for tennis content, I want to watch every match and not, qualifying. Fine,
Yeah.
whatever. Let's not put up cameras and the expense of that. You could tell me probably the numbers and how much it costs to do that, but I'm sure it's not nothing.
No.
And so I get it, but I should be able to see every 250 and above match. And whatever the women's level, I still have no idea how they do their tournaments. But and I couldn't. So I may look at doing the WTA TV tennis.com or whatever it's called this year.
Well, it's back on Tennis Channel.
Yeah, but
You want to see every match.
I want to see every match that I want to see.
I can appreciate that.
I don't want to see Serena beat the hell out of somebody, in 15 minutes, and they have 9 hours of coverage of that match. I want to see. I want to see the two qualifiers playing each other in the first round.
Sure,
Oddly
high stakes in those qualities.
It really is.
Because those players are fighting for their next week's hotel payment. So yeah,
That's true. Well, I think the other side of that is though that the most important matches for ratings are also not the most important matches for me as a fan.
Yeah.
If you're I don't want to talk bad about people, but if you're a real fan of tennis, because it's easy to get enamored by Serena, to get enamored by Roger, Nadal, but that they're going to be gone sooner than later. And then what are we going to have? It's going to be
Right.
cupboards are going to be bare.
Which that's why I feel like if people were watching the WTA last year, or this past year, which I wish more people were, probably there were fewer people because of the TV situation. But
a lot fewer, I think.
There is so much to be excited about because, and there's the argument, the depth or dominance. Steve Tigner just did an article with Christopher Clary about this and what do people really want to see. People, and to be honest, people complain no matter what. If there's depth and there's a different player winning every week, oh well, there's no real strong players on the WTA side, and if Serena is beating everyone, well, the rest of the tour must be weak. So personally, I loved the fact that this past year there were 4 different Slam winners plus a new winner for the WTA finals. There are 5 different players who won all 5 of those events. And I think that is so cool. Well,
it's only cool if the level is good throughout, and it is.
Yes.
And even when Serena's healthy, she's not doing what the big 3 on the men's side are doing.
Right.
To have 2 almost 40-year-olds flip-flopping Grand Slams, and that's one of the big things we talk about. So our number one, probably if somebody said boil down this podcast, this is it. It might be embarrassing, but this is it. That this is the weakest era in the history of men's tennis.
All right.
We say that. I started saying that, and Corey laughed at me in that chair you're sitting in. But I've turned him to my side because Federer can go away for 6 months and come back and get right back to number 1. He didn't play for the entire clay season and nothing changed in the rankings. And people send out these tweets, some things, are the same, whatever, where you get the top 3 from 03, or not 03, but like 05, and the top 3 right now are the same. What does that tell you? That tells you that incredibly, we have 3 Michael Jordans right now, or maybe, just maybe, that next gen, not so much.
Right. Well, or a combo.
I'll go with my first, but I'll consider the combo.
Fair. I mean, you could see it both ways, and I think most people. I appreciate that you have thought about this to the point where you could
break my computer, yes, and punch, yes. Well, but here's the thing: the defense of women's tennis, in contrast to the men's version. I mean, Federer and Nadal, and to some degree Djokovic. I think people hate him too as much as they like him, and so that adds to it, which I don't know why.
Interesting phenomenon.
Except he's got Lego hair. I can't stand his Lego hair. He looks like so. The fact that you got 3 people that are superstars, or one super duper star and then superstars, that's what makes that sport popular. You can't tell me Zverev bricking volleys into the net or into the 4th row of the stands on put away volleys that he's drawing anything. So as soon as they're gone, men's tennis is going to go off a cliff. Women's tennis, on the other hand, if they put it on TV, is going to drive this game. Can it drive this game by itself, do you think?
Ooh. I'd love to say yes to that. I hope
it can.
Well, I hope. But
for real fans.
It's also, though, going to have to be somewhat in the hands of the people who cover it.
True.
And the people who have the ability to give it precedence on a TV schedule, or there's going to have some of that responsibility is going to be put on the people who have the ability to promote it.
Will their hand be forced when they can't sort of brush off the argument or brush off the criticism when they can say, well, how can we not put Federer on the primetime matches? How can we not have Federer play 9 matches in a row? I know they only play 7, but at Australia at night, it's 117 degrees, and he's playing when it's 70. And they say, well, it's Federer. He's the greatest player ever, and blah, blah, blah. So when Zverev's won in the world and still can't get past the semifinals of a Grand Slam.
This could be Zverev's year.
Oh, my God.
You don't think?
Oh, my God. I'm going to throw this podcast in the garbage just because of that comment. So next gen, we know who those people are. So you take Tsitsipas in that sort of age group. We call them the next gen. The next gen is going to bunny hop the next gen as soon as the big 3 are gone. And the next gen will not win a single Grand Slam, and the next gen will be back to normal tennis.
Well, that's sort of what happened with Nishikori and Raonic and Dimitrov. Those three are the ones that come to mind. But that was the next gen. That was the first next gen.
Right. They're a smidge older, but yeah, exactly.
But when they were younger, people thought that they were going to be the ones.
Yeah,
to start
baby
beating.
fed. Right.
Exactly. So yes, there have been a couple of gens that have come and gone. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Well, the only thing that proves my point, I think that really can prove my point, is if that happens, like the Tsitsipas and younger. And when I say younger, I don't necessarily mean the year they were born. I mean the period of time where they peaked in their game. Because Zverev is obviously at 3 in the world or whatever. He's been as high as 3 in the world. So he's peaked, even though he's younger than some of these other guys. He might be younger than Tsitsipas, or they're very close. But so I don't mean age. I mean where they're at in their career age. And so all those guys that have been pushing that the top up against the top 3, they're gonna get bunny hopped by the Tsitsipas group. That's my prediction and my hope, because then I'm right.
As long as I can get a de Minaur Grand Slam win at some point, I'll be happy.
You like that guy?
Huge fan.
All right.
Huge.
Is he good looking or something, or is he just nice? Have you met him?
Yeah, I have. Okay. Great attitude.
I like that. He's Australian. So
well, that's not always.
That's a good point.
It's not a guarantee on the attitude.
0 for 3 on the last,
right. But I mean, just a really great attitude, exceptionally hard worker, and there are players out there who when you're watching them play, you can tell that they love it.
Right.
And even when they're losing, even when it's, when he played Cilic at the U.S. Open, it was probably not many people saw it because it was so late at night, but that was one of the best matches of the tournament.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was.
And yeah, I mean, he just loves it.
One of those guys happy to be a part of a match like that kind of attitude.
Yeah.
That's the best.
Happy to be part of a match like that, but I think believes he can win too. I had him on my court that I was hosting at Indian Wells last year, and that was kind of right as he was starting to have some stronger results after he had a great Aussie run last year. What did he make? Semifinals and finals last year in Australia, Brisbane, and what's the other one that I'm forgetting? Anyway, I'm not going to waste your time thinking of what it is, but he had some strong results. I had him. He had a big win on my court, and I think it might have been over Jan-Lennard Struff. And it was a great match. The stands were packed, and he's signing balls. I hand him the balls to sign to hit into the stands, and he's literally shaking. He can barely write his name on the ball. So I think at that point there was still an element of do I belong here? Am I ready to be here?
Right.
I'm nervous being on this stage where everybody's cheering for me. But I think he has really grown in the last year. I saw him in Newport as well. Definitely more confident. We did a video segment there, and I was thinking, he's going to be nervous again. He was fantastic. So I think he's growing into that.
Right.
But yeah, huge fan of de Minaur. So.
All right. Well, good. I'll keep more of an eye on him. And that's a great point, because it illustrates something I've been saying. I'm not really selfish, I swear. But one of the things I talk about in relation to this weakest era argument I have is that if you were to just watch every one of these players, just sort of look at just their half of the court, of course, they're all world-class athletes. Of course, they can play tennis physically at such a high level, but you just segued right into the real reason that next-gen group I have no faith in, and it's from the neck up. And so to watch somebody, of course, you're going to not have confidence when you're young. You don't know your place in the game. You don't know if you belong. You've been playing in this smaller group, and you've beaten that group and worked your way into the next bigger group. So, of course, now you're looking up again. And so you have to go through that process, and some players, obviously, handle it well and grow from each and gain that confidence, and some don't. Some get it too fast and don't realize they maybe don't belong, and then they find out they don't. I mean, Federer used to throw rackets when he had a longer ponytail back in the day. So, so that's where, obviously, I'm not an idiot. These people can hit tennis balls. Got it. But yeah, I mean, Exhibit A, Zverev's volleys. I mean, it's pitiful. It's just pitiful.
Not your favorite
it's just pitiful.
Of Zverev's game.
Pick any player from the 70s, and he'd have a Grand Slam title if he had their volleys.
Yeah.
Maybe. But still. Anyway, so All right, we're gonna watch the Australia. So was it Sydney or in Auckland that you're thinking of?
It must have. Okay, so it must have been Sydney and
Brisbane.
Must have been Sydney and Brisbane. Yeah. I'm thinking.
Well, I'd like to see. I'm a fan of all players, and I have players that I'd rather see win for whatever reason, but it's changed in the last 2 years that I want to see players. I watch tennis now, men's tennis, like I watch college football.
Okay, how do you watch
I
football?
want there to be mayhem because if you start with Alabama at number 1, they're going to end at number 1. If you were to start Alabama at 10, they probably would end up in the top 4, but maybe not number 1. If you would have started Notre Dame at 25, they wouldn't have been
right
in the finals, the Final Four, getting murdered the other day. Ugh. I mean, obviously they didn't belong, and so I like to see, I want to see Central Florida destroy.
Wouldn't that be so nice?
That would be great, and then maybe we'd get to 8 teams in the playoff, and then that'd solve all the problems. But I watch men's tennis like that. I want somebody to come in there and just upset the apple
Shake it
cart,
up. Right?
But I want them to last. I don't want a player just to come along, win one, title, Chilich, and then never, And to be fair, how much deeper will we be if Delpo could hold, duct tape himself together a little better? If Nishikori didn't get hurt a lot, there's others. But so to be fair, maybe some of that has added to the lack of depth, but it's still there because they're not playing.
Well, and it'll be interesting to see. I mean, who knows what'll happen this year? And the big question is, will Federer win another slam?
No.
You're
ever or this year?
I mean, I feel like if it's a no for this year, it's probably a no ever.
So
right?
I just figured out how you're going to laugh at me, and I don't care. The fans know I'm illiterate on a phone, but I just figured out how to do a poll on Twitter.
Ooh, all right.
Yeah.
Polling people? What
I
are
did
the polls telling us?
like a week or two ago. I can't remember when I did it. And the question was, which is more likely to happen? Djokovic wins all 4 or next gen? Not a next gen. And our fans know next gen.
Okay.
We've been saying that for a while. So, or a next genner wins 1 this year. And they thought the percentages were that a next genner was going to win a Grand Slam would be more likely than Djokovic winning a Grand Slam this year. I think he's going to win all 4.
Do you?
Including the French, and I don't care if Nadal's 100%.
Ooh, bold.
Now that's not bold because he's already pulling out of tournaments in the beginning of the season. So who knows if he's going to hold it together?
We've thought that Rafa was on his career deathbed many times,
and if we were in a deeper era, he would be.
Well, I have to say, Zverev impressed me with his performance at the ATP finals. I got to hand it to him. And listen, am I Zverev?
Yeah, Isner won a Masters this year too, so
he did. Isner played lights out though in Miami.
I wish I had a snoring sound. I had to make that myself.
John Isner.
If somebody could take a bone saw and cut his thighs about 6 inches and then have him shrink down a little bit so he'd be able to last more than a set, he'd be unbelievable.
Huh.
He's just too tall. He's just
too tall. Well, hey, I got to say, though, I mean, for what people, I think, thought John Isner
was
going to do coming out of UGA, I think.
Thank goodness he is playing in the weakest era in the history of men's tennis. Now listen, I don't know who you know or who you don't know, who you're friends with, who you don't in the business, but
I'm impartial. I'm a journalist.
Outstanding. Here's my number one argument. Can you guess what my number one argument for this being the weakest era in the history of men's tennis is? 2 words.
Is it a name?
Yep.
Oh man. Andy Murray?
Jack Sock. 8 in the world. 8 in the world. And this is not the weakest era in the history of men's tennis. And he would beat me up in a fight. There's no question about it. He's an elite athlete. I got it.
And, Jake
8 in the world.
He's no longer 8 in the world.
No, he's not. No, he's not. He's where he should be.
That was one of the more incredible things I've seen happen in a tennis season.
Sure.
Side note was his inability to win.
Oh,
tennis
this season.
matches
Oh, right.
in
Yeah.
In 2018.
Yeah.
That was surprising. Surprising or mind-boggling. It was very strange.
Well, he was a product of the skyrocket to the year-end finals and then realizing, whoa, I don't belong here. And then he was proven right. He was proven right.
I think that's been a struggle with, I think too of like a Marty Fish, for instance, who I, loved to watch play.
Sure.
He is an incredibly nice guy, and
he played in that
at many. Go ahead.
He played in that 50K I ran.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah, I mean, Marty Fish, when he reached, what was his peak? Was he top 10 when he was in his peak? Was it seven? I think 7, maybe 7 in the world. I mean, I think he was an example of a guy who got to that peak and thought, I don't know that this is where I want to be with all the eyes on me.
Sure.
And that is a tough adjustment.
For sure.
And it goes to your point about what's between the ears and who is cut out to stay at the top once they reach the top. And that's I think the only downside on the women's tour right now. I love to see new faces and I love to see the apple cart being upset, as you say, but I also want to see that killer instinct when, said X player makes their huge breakthrough. It
means something. If you've got a standard, so because what we have without Serena there, what we have is we don't have apple carts being turned over. We have people throwing apples at each other all over the place. It's just mayhem. So then you have that bar that said, okay, there's Serena. So if somebody wins with her in the ballpark, then it's a legit win. Whereas she's been out so much, there is the danger of people thinking, wow, these people winning, like Halep winning her first, Wozniacki winning her first, that it's not legit. The argument I have is they were there, though. When she was there, they were at the upper echelon. They didn't come out of nowhere. Because there is that danger in women's tennis that Serena's not there, so none of this is real. Yet, they make the inverse argument for the men. Well, Federer, and they're all the greatest ever.
Right.
So you were right, though. Fish was a career high of 7. And I think he had it between the ears on the court, but he's talked pretty openly about, mental health and dealing with some issues there, which is unfortunate because I was a fan. I've tried to get him to drink a beer. We were there with Todd Martin. I think it might have been his last season.
One of my favorites is Todd Martin.
You know what this podcast thinks of Todd Martin? The most underrated American tennis player in history.
Oh, love. I'm sure he'd love to hear that. Todd is like the most anti-say anything good about me person. He's like, don't stop that.
He's the most underrated American tennis player ever. But he was ranked 62 in the world. And our 50K was in November. And so that was the first year that they were going to start seeding 32 players. So I think he was trying to bump up that last push before the Australian, and ultimately ended up getting hurt practicing with James Blake, who still had dreadlocks. And
vintage.
He was probably he was about $125. Mike Bryan was there. He played singles. We couldn't get him to play doubles because they were top 10 by then, but they were.
Mike Bryan, oldest world number 1. Incredible.
Doubles has the same problem men's singles does right now, but whatever.
In what way?
So you don't think that if Federer teamed with Wawrinka full time that they'd be the best doubles team in the history of the game? Yes, they would.
Yeah. Doubles is different though.
It is, but not that different. When the skill level is so different.
Agree. But that is
the Bryan brothers haven't won every gold.
True. I mean, well, yeah, of course you have
because
Stan.
No, but all the singles players played when the Olympics came around. They don't play year round. So, except for Indian Wells, I need to know the secret. How do they get players to play doubles?
They have that incentive.
They do?
If you win the doubles and the singles titles, you get I believe it's $1 million bonus.
Wow.
That was actually a fun little game for us on-court MCs. Was we had, by the fifth or sixth day of the tournament, we had our little running mental list of the players who still were
in the running with both.
In the running for
Wow.
singles and doubles, which it was always fun to mention that in the post-match interview. Like, all right, I don't know if you're aware of this, but it's because I think they did it for the first time this past year. But even before that,
they've had doubles. They've had a pretty good run with doubles. But so Marty Fish, big fan of his too. But yeah, so him, Todd Martin, and James Blake wanted to watch. And what's that guy's name? He was an American player. He had one good run at Wimbledon. Tall, skinny kid with black hair. Back in the early 2000s. He went to Florida, and the Florida coach left to be his coach, Jeff Morrison.
Oh, Jeff Morrison.
Jeff Morrison.
Yeah,
so
okay.
They all wanted to watch the World Series. It was when the Diamondbacks were in the World Series. And so one of the old clubs I used to work at in town, one of the country clubs, they were closed, but I called the guy that was the director of tennis there, and he got the men's grill open for us. And so we went to watch the World Series. And so,
amazing.
So he got beers for everybody, and Marty Fish was like 17. So he was a good boy, didn't drink. So I can.
That's a fun little anecdote. But yeah, I mean, it's hard once you have that breakthrough and you come into the next tournament and people are expecting massive things from you. Certain players are cut out to embrace that, and some players might never get to the point where they do.
Right.
And again, I don't know.
And that's a wild card that you can't prepare for.
Yeah. No, I mean, you have no idea until you're there.
Because it's not your coach, it's not your parents, it's not other players, it's the press, it's your federation, it's family, it's got to be nuts.
I mean, and there have been so many players on the women's side who've struggled with that. Angie Kerber, after she won her first, dropped off the race. I mean, she struggled in 2017 before obviously having a good year this past year. But the Garbine Muguruza also has had,
so
up and down.
I don't want to say I have disdain for men's players that go off the rails like Nick Kyrgios. I don't want to say I have disdain, because I think that's what all his antics are, is not dealing with any of this pressure, whether it's on court or off court. He's just
deflecting.
Exactly. If I act like a jackass, he'll talk about that, and then that'll be the excuse I have why I'm not winning Grand Slams. So I'm not going to say I have disdain for it, but it drives me insane. You're a girl, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. You got to ask these days. Would I be sexist for not having that same level of disgust for women that sort of, not act like idiots, but have to deal with those mental hurdles and don't do it as well? In other words, what I'm saying is, am I sexist for thinking that women have more to overcome via the emotional control side of things than men are?
Let me make sure I'm understanding the question. You think women have more to deal with on the emotional side of things than men?
And I do live with two women. Well, one woman and one going to be a woman one day, my daughter.
Yeah,
If you can't admit it, we'll just edit this part out. That's okay.
So you think, I mean, I don't know. I think if I'm sitting here thinking I have more to deal with than a random, guy on the men's tour, I think I'm in trouble already.
Well, I would say y'all both have, outside you have the same to deal with. I'm talking about inside. So wouldn't you say that generally, not counting this era of men's tennis, which is what again? Exactly, the weakest era in the history of men's tennis, that on the women there is way more up and down with players than men?
Yes.
Can physiology explain that, do you think? And am I sexist for thinking it can?
I would...
I'm begging you to say no so I can continue down this in future podcasts. Because once I have you stamp of approval from a girl, I'm good to go. Because that's my assertion. And it's not a negative. It's just physiology.
Well, okay, yes. Okay, maybe I'm not totally understanding your question. You are what you are. So you either deal with it or you don't deal with it.
Right, but girls have more to deal with physiologically, in terms of emotional control than men do. We're cavemen is what I'm... It's not even a negative. It's really a negative on us. We're dumb. We beat our head against rocks. That's what we do until the rock breaks.
Well, I just think it's a complicated question. I get where you're coming from, but I just have never, as a woman, I've never thought about it that way. I just don't. If somebody were to, diagram the physiology, probably on paper, yes, you could make a case for that. But it's just something I've never even thought about.
You should.
Okay, tell me why.
I'll tell you why. Because then you can watch women's tennis and really look at the nuance of what those players are dealing with. And now you have a different rooting interest. Now it's like, is she going to get it back together? Is she going to hold? You know what I mean? What
about when you look back at like the Evert Navratilova era?
Then wow, those are specimens that are at the top. And anybody that's at the top of the top are outliers anyway. So no matter whether you're men or women, you're just outliers, and they don't count towards the argument. And on the opposite end of the spectrum too, Nick Kyrgios doesn't count. He's such an outlier. But the point is, just physiologically, I think women have more chemical issues going on in their bodies that affect them than men do.
You could argue that, yes.
Which is why, if you put it this way, if we could admit that, first of all, coaches that coach men and women won't be, go crazy trying to coach women, because now you have a frame of reference that you're allowed to talk about in this world without being branded as sexist or whatever. But also, you can look at the women's game and not just sound like that idiot, fat, male chauvinist. Women, they're not, competing and all that crap. No, they're dealing with physiological issues that affect their emotional control. Now, how awesome is it to watch now Sloane win a first set and Halep still hang in there, and then watch Sloane fall apart and see if Halep can take advantage of it? You
think that's physiologically based, though?
Sure.
More so than if that were to happen, pick a men's match.
Everything's physiological. Everything's physical. It doesn't come from outer space. Your chemicals are what make you have emotions. Right. So y'all have more chemical interactions as women than we do as men.
Interesting. All right. Well,
and again, it's not you're just dumb girls and you can't handle pressure because you're little ladies at all. That's exactly the opposite of what I'm trying to get at. Because I can watch a match and it doesn't frustrate me when women go off the rails. Now, there's other reasons people go off the rails. Everybody gets tight in matches. I've coached men and women that get tight. I think women that overcome that have overcome more than men have. So really, it's a compliment. And I'm not kidding. It's really having to deal with that. But you live every day as a woman, so there's no reference point on what I'm talking about.
Listen, I was a volunteer assistant for the Rice women's tennis team for a while. So I saw firsthand what it was like to oversee. Obviously, I was on a team, but I saw what it was like to oversee a team of women. Certainly, we're just different. But I don't necessarily think that that's less stable, which I think is that's what I'm hearing a little bit.
Look at you hearing things I'm not saying. Women.
There's less stability, but really though, you're saying that it's more of a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say that I can translate that to less stable. And listen, I don't take it personally. I appreciate the point of view. But as a woman, I can say that I think some people just deal with it better. Some people deal with being in the trenches better than others. And some people deal with being the favorite better than others.
True.
And I don't know that we have had, I've heard Chris Evert and Martina talk about this firsthand and saying listen, that's the one disappointment that they have is they want to see that person who has the breakthrough keep it. Yeah, exactly.
Hold on to it.
So I think it's possible because we've seen it. We've seen it with Serena. We've seen it with, I'm naming those two.
But think about Muguruza.
Right.
She has a breakthrough, disappears. Sloane had a breakthrough and then couldn't buy him. She's worse than Jack Sock for about 2 months there. And that's saying a lot because Jack Sock was 8 in the world.
Sloane, I wouldn't be surprised if she does great things this year.
No, agreed. Absolutely agreed.
But she's an example.
But we've seen a ton of examples on the women's side of that have done that more, where they win and then go away. And I think part of that may be it. And again, it's going to sound awful when people listen to this podcast, but I don't care.
Let's put it all out there, right?
No. But the bottom line is if in 2 years all we have left is Serena in terms of the superstars in the game, women's tennis is going to have to carry it. And if people don't know how to watch women's tennis and know what to look for and what to expect, and then they're going to have a hard time following it and not getting frustrated watching it, because it's hard unless you are just an absolute outlier like Serena. And Venus, if she was, didn't have her condition and all that, I think would be right there.
Right. Yeah. Well, people relate. The fringe fans relate to the superiority of.
Right.
Yeah. So yes, in terms of mass appeal, you want to have players that you are familiar with, and that the fan who just happens to flip on TV on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon are like, oh, I've seen that person before.
Right.
That
on
is,
a commercial.
Yeah.
Right.
That is incredibly helpful in terms of the marketability of women's tennis, and that is the reason why I hope that maybe one or two, or that there's a rivalry that emerges in the next year or two.
Well, if somebody climbs up to the top of the ladder, Serena retires, and then that player dominates, I still don't think it's going to look the same as Serena. I mean, Serena is separate.
Once in a
for a lot of reasons.
Lifetime athlete.
I mean, the whole thing coming up, with her sister, her dad saying they're going to be 1 and 2 in the world, and all the rest of it from then to now is what makes Serena Serena. I don't know if anybody else will be that.
Yeah, I mean, I have high hopes for Naomi Osaka. She's
from the other side of the world. And again, I'm talking about American
she grew up here, though.
tennis.
Yeah.
I mean, so who knows?
Yes, American tennis. I mean, Sloane has the star power. I don't think she's going to win 23 Grand Slams, but she has the star power. So, I mean, listen, I think we just have to adjust our expectations in a post-Serena world.
Well, we have to figure out how to educate people how to watch women's tennis and appreciate it, because we're going to have to. Because if we have to rely on Jack Sock to carry us on the men's, we're doomed.
Francis Tiafoe.
Doomed. Have you seen his forehand?
I love Francis.
It's weird. It's weird forehand.
He's made it work, though.
His brother plays D3.
Really?
Yep.
I didn't know that.
I've never seen him play. I'm assuming his forehand looks exactly the same.
His brother?
I would assume. I'm assuming they came up. I don't know who coaches them, but I'm assuming they came up the same time together,
Yeah, JTCC in Maryland.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, I get it. I totally understand where you're coming from. But I know we're probably running out of time here, but I have to ask you one question.
That was her passive-aggressive way of saying she's got to go, because she's a girl. Just kidding.
When you say you want to educate people on how to watch women's tennis.
Well, how to watch tennis in general, honestly, because people, like, here's an easy example I use all the time is, you're impartial, so you're going to answer this honestly.
Yes.
Is watching almost any John Isner match miserably boring? Yes, is the answer. Come on now. Almost any.
As an American, if you watch the final, is the Isner
Would it be
final
fair?
Against Zverev? Yes. Is John Isner's style of play the most scintillating?
That's what I'm getting at. Now,
No.
Granted, you're more educated.
There are other reasons
You're
why
not
you can cheer for Isner, though.
the average fan, so it's a little different because you're, but you've been coached. You played at a high level. You've been coached at a high level, so you can look at things that he's looking at or that his coach is looking at, and so it's a little unfair to try to sell you on this. But
Yes,
the
it's
bottom
not the
line
most
is,
interesting tennis.
no one wants to watch him play tennis. It's miserable. But if you can get down into, watching the difference between Federer trying to return his serve and get into his serve games versus some of these young next-gen idiots who just close their eyes and try to wail on his return, Federer's blocking. Just a simple thing like that. What are you looking for? What's the battle you're watching? Wow, that's the battle you're watching. You're watching them try to get this cannon back into the court somehow and then tire the big galoot out until you can just slice balls to him and he's falling down. Well, by the same token, back to my sexist argument, on the women's side, watching, because I guarantee you that watching Madison Keys in the U.S. Open fall apart. I mean, the score, if you have any tennis knowledge, the score is not even close to what the match was. I mean, it was if it was 1-1, it would have been worse than the score indicated. But watching her fall off the rails like that, you can either just say, oh, wow, this is over and not care, or you can watch that battle, look at it from the emotional control side. Mm-hmm. And when I say emotional, I don't mean emotional because women, have menstrual cycles and they're emotional. What I mean is there's 3 parts of the game, physical, mental, and emotional. Mm-hmm. And I mean mental, not just for, I'll tell you probably know this, but for the fans, mental is strategy, those kinds of things, not.
Got it.
Emotional. So a lot of people say mental, they mean emotional. I say emotional to mean emotional control, whether you're too aggressive or you get tight or whatever. And so watching those emotional battles on the women's side, which sounds even more sexist when I say it out loud, but it's the opposite of that. But watching that battle and understanding that that's one of the bigger battles in the women's side, I think will help people to appreciate it a lot more.
Okay.
Did I save myself?
Well, okay, one more follow-up question for you.
Uh-oh.
How did you feel watching...
Women should be in the kitchen! Forget it! No, I'm kidding.
How did you feel watching Marin Cilic cry in his chair in the Wimbledon final?
Or Andy Murray, too, at the end when he won.
When he won his match at the City Open. Absolutely. How
the battle's still there. Yeah. The same stuff is still there. The same battle, I just think it's a little more prevalent in terms of the women than the men.
Okay.
That's all. So we all have to deal with those issues. Yeah. I just think the women don't have to deal with 150-mile-an-hour serves.
True.
Why? Just because we're different.
Yeah.
But again, Corey and I both, and I made fun of Corey because he didn't get BN on his cable or whatever. So I really told him he wouldn't switch. I told him he wouldn't switch his package because he hated women. He just didn't want to pay more for the next package on DirecTV that went up. But we actually, there's a reason I say the men's tennis is the weakest era in the history of men's tennis because I don't like it as much. I like the women a lot better right now. It's more compelling to me. And I've tried to sell this idea, in terms of the 3 phases that there's a little more heavy emphasis on emotional control on the women's side than the men. It's that simple.
All right.
You shouldn't be in the kitchen unless you want to be.
There you go.
And I
don't want to be.
I can make like 2 things. I'm a terrible cook. I can make 2 things.
I'm terrible, and nor do I like it. I don't like trying.
But no, in educating people, hopefully, because I'm telling you, women's tennis is going to be. That's my prediction. Is women's tennis is going to have to be what carries.
Yeah,
tennis in America
will swing
in America
for sure.
It will, but it just seems like it's so dire in the U.S. right now that I worry. And so hopefully, they all kind of sunk a little bit rankings wise from last year. Where's Coco? But I think they'll have a resurgence this year. I hope, and the depth of American women's tennis compared to men. It's not even close.
Yeah.
So before we go, if you have a few minutes.
Sure.
So what do you think? Next Jenner or a Djokovic slam? Or neither?
And remind me on the next Jenner, you're talking about which group of...
So like Coric and Thiem and Zverev.
Okay, so Zverev is in that group. I'm going to say neither. I don't think Djokovic will win all 4. And I don't think I can bet the house on Zverev quite yet.
Yeah, if you had to put money on one, you'd go for the Djokovic slam, wouldn't you?
He's convincing right now, but here's the thing, and this is what happens. Like, people get so all in on, Djokovic 2 years ago or a year and a half ago. People thought he was going to break,
never lose again.
Yes, and things happen.
Guilty.
You have right. I know. I was
actually
too.
You said you didn't listen. I'm hurt, but if you go back and listen, we did say I actually said he won't get back to the level he was before he. Yeah. But that's because he was playing at that Connors in '84 level, where it was like he couldn't lose a match.
Yeah.
74, not 84. Where he the only reason he would have Grand Slam is because they didn't let people that played World Team Tennis play the French or whatever it was. So he had one of those years. So I said that he wouldn't get back to that level. I might be wrong. He might dominate from here on out. Especially, I know we put Nadal in his grave more than once, but at some point, his career has to end at some point. And I think
he's only that's the thing we also forget about Rafa, though. He's only 32.
Yeah, but only 32 10 years ago. That was it.
Right.
15 years ago. And he's such a physical, player. And the kind of injuries he's had are not little tweaks. I mean, he's a knee. That's not good.
I'm amazed that he's still doing what he's doing. I hope he is still doing it in 2019. But yeah, I mean, Djokovic, I just have to look at the history when I think about, projecting the Djokovic slam it's just the most bizarre things have happened in the past 5 years. Andy Murray could pull it together and get over his hip problem and be a contender again.
I can't predict injury outcomes because I'm not a doctor. As a matter of fact, I will pass out immediately if I see blood. But
you and my husband.
If he's 100%, then he'll be 4 in the world tomorrow. Not tomorrow, but because he's in the 200s. But if he's 100%, but how can you predict anything because you have no idea? And again, it's the weakest era. So he's going to race right back to where he belongs if he's 100%.
I hope so.
And once again, that'll prove it's the weakest era in the history of men's tennis.
I just think there are too many variables to say Djokovic.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
Too many variables.
There's too many variables just within Djokovic, much less the hundreds of players that are trying to beat him.
Right.
So
that was a bizarre fall off the cliff he had. And there were so many factors, I don't know, rumored factors on that. You just never know. We're dealing with people, not robots, and that is what we have to remind ourselves.
Well, I hate doing predictions, but I don't know what else to do with a guest I've never met, and I don't know what else to do. Right. Besides ask you, tell me what's going to happen, prove it. One thing we do talk about, as opposed to what we think is going to happen, is what we hope happens. Mm-hmm. And so on the women's side, I really hope Serena gets back to as peak fitness as she can get to and peak competitive level as she can get to, so we can have that bar set again. So now some of these players like Halep, who did get there first, or some of these other players who are pushing, we have a standard to compare them against, and they will be legitimized, which is unfair to some degree. But in terms of, it's Serena, for the love of Pete. She is the standard.
I hope she gets 24, and then I hope she maybe gets 25, drops the mic, and says,
"I'm out.
Peace out, suckers."
Yeah. Is there anybody from the 1820s that has more that we haven't heard about yet? That has more,
gosh,
some kind of weird stat that somebody has. So, I wouldn't mind at all. I think she is undisputed greatest player in the history of women's tennis.
Yep.
Undisputed. And I'm a huge Steffi Graf fan. If Monica Seles wouldn't have got stabbed in the back, who knows?
Man.
But those are the fun things to talk about, all the what ifs. But Serena's just so good. She's just so much better than everybody.
And she's good for tennis.
And she doesn't,
love her, hate her.
And she doesn't just win 0-0. She battles for these wins. It's not like she's just, 6'10", and dropping, and just, she's stronger than almost everybody, but still, she's not 6, she's 5'9", right? Something like that?
5'10", maybe, yeah.
Yeah, so the leverage she has is not overwhelming. She's just physically imposing, but not to the point where she just blasts people off the court.
Mm-hmm.
And
she's got to fight just like everyone else. We forget that, right?
And she gets down breaks, 2 breaks in third sets, and it doesn't matter. Then she just doesn't miss. Then she hits big shots. She's the greatest.
All right.
In women's tennis, Andy Murray.
Okay, John McEnroe.
We make fun of Andy Murray all the time because nobody can ask him a question ever without him doing his stupid anyway.
Yeah.
Because he's on the men's tour. When I'm talking to LeBron, I don't compare him to the WNBA stats.
But here's what I can appreciate, though, about Andy Murray is that he, by doing that, even though, yes, did that reporter in the interview you're referring to at Wimbledon when...
He wasn't discounting women.
Right. The reporter certainly wasn't. The reporter was talking about men's tennis. But in doing what Andy Murray does on such a regular basis is he brings awareness to the issue. And he's hired Emily Mauresmo. I
think... Is he still with her?
He is not.
Weird.
Luca Puig.
Weird.
Luca Puig and
Yeah, he didn't stay with her, so he just did it for appearances.
No, stop.
I don't like her because she's French. I don't care about the rest of it. I'm kidding. I took French in high school.
How did that go for you?
I can count to 100, and that's about it. I never learned any cuss words either, unfortunately.
Oh, man. Well, all I'll say on Andy Murray is I appreciate that he makes people think. Whether it's talking about the La Blonde d'Or, I'm going to pronounce it wrong, speaking of French, but there was a soccer player who was asked to twerk on stage after the most prestigious sports award.
European Sports Award.
Yeah, and Andy Murray has something to say about that, and I appreciate the fact that he's not scared because a lot of guys won't even dip their toe in that pool. So I appreciate it.
Well,
he makes people think.
It's 2018. He's not going out on any limb whatsoever. He gets 1 billion times more praise than he does flack for it by 100 miles.
Right, but why don't more guys jump on that train? If I were them, I would.
Because it doesn't matter. They're stupid pro tennis players who mean nothing.
Oh, gosh.
And there's only 3 tennis players, and he's a half. He's like the big 3.5.
Okay.
He's not. There's no big 4, right?
I hope he's back to the big.
There's no big 4. He's not part of the big 4.
I love Andy Murray. So
hey, listen. I don't dislike him. I don't even know the guy.
As impartial as I am.
You're impartial. I love it.
Mm. I like players who are good for tennis.
Djokovic does have Lego hair, doesn't he?
You are not wrong about that.
He takes it off.
It does look like
at
you
night
can remove
and
it.
Puts it in a box.
Yes.
And if you step on it, it'll really hurt your foot.
It does look that way. But hey, I feel like a lot of guys might be jealous of that hair because he's still got a lot of it.
That's true. That's true. That's what steroids do. No, I'm kidding. He's gluten free. It's Rafa that's on the roids.
Oh no,
that's not a fact. I just said that to be dumb. So women's tennis, Serena, we want her back, right? 100%.
We want her back. It would be great for tennis. I hope Naomi Osaka backs it up. I think she will.
Yeah.
This year, I hope Alina Svitolina wins a slam. Because she has a great personality, and I think she's underrated in terms of that. And I hope Sloane continues to do well. And Simona is a bit of a wild card because I think people are wondering how she'll do without Darren Cahill.
Right.
I hope well. She has
not me. I'm a coach. I want all these players to think they have to have a coach.
Well, gosh, on the WTA side, the coaches are getting top billing these days. Like they have the press. They've at the WTA finals, every coach got his or her own press conference.
Right.
We did interviews with every coach. It's become, if you're a coach, you better be able to speak coherently and eloquently because it's becoming, not only do you have your coaching visits on the changeovers filmed, but you're having to talk to the press now, which I think is great. Like, hey, listen, if I'm a coach,
you played college tennis. Do you think there should be college style coaching in tennis?
I like what's good for the viewers. And I do think that, do I think that it looks great for women's tennis that they're the ones who have the coach coming out to like assist them on the sidelines?
Because of their emotional control issues, right?
There you go.
Kidding.
Yes. I don't think it looks great for tennis or for women's tennis as far as that's concerned. But I don't really think it matters what I think. I think it matters what people enjoy watching. And I do. There are coaching. I listen. I turn up the TV when the coach comes for the changeover. And I think that's a plus. And so whatever is going to make tennis more interesting to the fringe fan, that is what I want to see.
Well, here's the thing. To me, the number one reason I want it is because it gives at least one more variable added into the mix that might make both players play at their best possible level. Because ultimately, every single match we want to see both players playing at their peak level at the same time. That's what makes for great matches. And if you have one extra variable out there that maybe can kick them into gear, then I'm all for it. And I don't see how what makes tennis special is how, we got to figure out things for ourselves. They still do. Yeah. They still do. They still have to decide whether they're going to take that information, and use it or, whatever. So
no, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. And that's not necessarily a popular opinion. I think most people who watch tennis regularly would say do away with the on-court coaching.
And I have no problem that if I'm Federer and you're a qualifier that you can't pay for your coach to be there and I can, well, we just don't have coaching for that match. That's fine. I have no problem with it being equitable and making sure that, whatever. But, I think if, I don't know how they get around that. But I think there has to be a consideration for that. Maybe the lower ranked player can have it's their decision whether they have coaching or not. Whatever.
That's interesting.
Something like that, because that does make a difference. If you didn't even know you were gonna whatever, you qualified on accident, or like that guy that drove back with his grandma.
Yes,
he didn't bring his coach.
My favorite stories.
Yeah, that was a great story.
2018 Roland Garros. Yeah.
Well, usually at this point, I ask Corey if he's got anything else, and he knows he's supposed to say no because nobody wants to hear from him anymore. Don't worry, he doesn't listen to his own show. So, but anything that you want to throw out there, anything we didn't chat about, or something that's really getting you fired up for the
else. Well, I the one thing that comes to mind when I think about my goal for 2019, and really my goal anytime I work a tournament, is I want to, whether it's through a written story, a video that I'm doing with a player, a post-match interview on the court, I want to showcase the player's personality. And there are so many avenues to be able to consume that content, whether you're watching a match and you watch the post-match interview, or they clip it and put it on Twitter, whatever it is, or you're watching on YouTube. I want to encourage tennis fans to seek out that content and find the players that really get you going, because I love allowing fans to see players in a different light, because to me that's what makes a lifelong fan, is when they hear whichever player it is make a
really good point.
Del Potro has made his comeback. I mean, he's had 10 comebacks in his career, but he's made his comeback at the Delray Beach Open. I think 2 of the 3 years. This will be my 4th year doing that tournament. And it's South Florida. You have a lot of Latin fans. People are going nuts. And he, I think it was 2016 or 2015. I'm the worst when it comes to tennis dates, but he was coming back from it was like his major comeback from his 3rd wrist surgery. And I asked him if he, what he had heard about his opponent. He's like, listen, I've been sitting on my couch watching The Simpsons for the past 2 years, so I have no idea who's doing what out on the court. And it was just that's one example. I could list several of those.
Yeah.
But it would encourage tennis fans to look at that content, whether it's following a tournament on social media, because almost every tournament puts out that kind of content now. Do it, because you might learn something about a player you had never even heard of before, and you're like, hey, I want to see how that person does in 2019. So that would be my advice.
That's I'm glad I asked you, because that was a really good insight. No, so I feel a little stalky, and I shouldn't, because it's 2018. But I was looking up some videos of you.
Oh, sure.
Which sounds creepy, but
that's all right.
You put out content on the internet on purpose.
I do.
That's how old I am. I'm like. By the way, I was watching your videos, and I feel all creepy.
Normal these days.
But I saw one you did with Feliciano Lopez.
Oh my gosh!
So first of all, is he as good looking as I think he is in person? Holy crap!
He is.
Those glasses. Come on.
There's a reason why Grigor Dimitrov has a thing for Feliciano Lopez's calves.
Yeah.
Let's just say. So
anyway, but yeah, you were asking him non-tennis related questions, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. And I think you're exactly right that we had. So when I was running one of those futures of the Challenger back in the day, part of the deal was we helped players get housing, and some of it was with local tennis fans. They would stay at their house, and so we had these players that were 250 in the world and probably never made it. I think the guy I'm talking about in particular made it maybe in the top 50. But the house he stayed at, those people, they were his biggest fan, besides maybe his mom and dad. And, it was like they followed him every level he played at from there on out, because he was down in the trenches in the Challenge. You don't get any coverage. And back in the early 2000s, even less. But, now granted, they stayed at his house, but to the same idea, but to a smaller degree, just getting to know what their dog's name is, which is one of Delpo's big, selling points. Is he tweets out his
Caesar.
Yeah,
Caesar died this year.
Tweeted out his dog stuff all the time, and that adds such a level, of depth to your fandom for a player. So that's a really good idea. And to be honest with you, I think that's on the two tours. I think that's on the ATP and the WTA to do that.
And they're doing both sides. I know from personal experience.
That's good.
They've invested a lot.
I mean, the player obviously can do some stuff, but they're busy. They're busy trying to run their career. And so their tours should be responsible because it's only going to help the tours overall.
Yep. They do a lot of that, and again, the onus though is sometimes on the players to say yes. And I think at just about every level, maybe not in the top 10, but until you're in the top 10, I think players should say yes, assuming it's not a scam or it's not
right.
somebody.
Sure.
You want to vet who you're talking to,
right?
But assuming it's legit,
right.
They should say yes because it can equal actual money for them.
Hockey did that years ago. It's just a bunch of Canadians, skating around on an ice pond. And I remember at one point, maybe late 90s, I think they had a strike in the early 90s or mid 90s. And then after that, they started to get crazy. The NHL was trying to get fans back, and access to hockey players used to be really open, and it helped. And they're now one of the top sports in the U.S. So I agree with you that on the tennis side, just getting more access to players, which is tough for them. I mean, I get it. That's not an easy thing to give up, but it helps your brand and
totally.
The world has moved that way. Sorry,
I know,
it's too late.
Yeah, but that's what I would just like those players who are on the rise. I just want to tell them, guys, this can mean actual dollars for you.
Right.
If people love you, even if you're not ranked in the top 20. That can equal money. So there is a benefit to having people realize what a sparkling personality you have. I
mean, aside from Nadal, Federer, Sharapova, Williams, when I was at the U.S. Open last year, I think the biggest murmur around the grounds was when Delpo was about to go on court. Yes. And they'd rush over to one of these outer stadiums, and it was just packed. You couldn't even get up the steps. It was just packed. And I think almost any player could do that. I mean, who he is as a person, his personality is why it's natural to him, and he puts it online. Other people need to maybe open up and try it. I think that'd be really good for them. But I think more importantly to me, I think it'd be good for the game.
That's what we all want.
Unless you're Jack Sock.
Poor Jack.
I know. He's going to beat me up one day. All right. Well, listen, I really appreciate you. I wouldn't just say filling in for Corey. I would say far surpassing anything Corey could have done. I'm really saying all this because he doesn't listen. And so I'm hoping.
I hope I get to meet Corey one day. I'll tell him in person that I was better than he was.
There you go. Please do. Please do. He needs to little knock down a peg or two. So, no, I do appreciate you coming in and a real live tennis journalist. I didn't know we had those in America. I'm glad to know we do have people out there putting pen to paper, even if it's electronically, spreading the word of our fantastic sport. And hopefully that'll translate over time into more people playing it, so the game can just be more healthy in overall in our country, which is one of the missions or whatever you want to call it for this podcast. So it is good. I will follow you on Twitter now, but you have to at least promise to listen to at least this episode.
I promise. And
Can you listen to yourself? Is that hard? I hate it. Not listening to you. I mean, listening to myself.
I know what you mean. I've gotten used to it. It's not my favorite thing, but I've gotten used to it.
Hate it.
But yeah, that's incentive to listen to more of them. You have quite a few.
I do have a ton of too many.
A lot of catching up to do.
Too many. So anyway, if you are out there and you're listening to this podcast, you already know all my stuff. So I'm going to forego all of my stuff for you to give your stuff. So Twitter, is that a thing? Right? You're on that. What's your thing?
At Blair Henley.
With no BLAIR. I feel so creepy. LEY, like the shirt, like the Henley shirt.
Yes, the Henley shirt. No relation to Don, sadly.
Oh, Don Henley, gotcha. I didn't even think about that.
I get asked that all the time.
Yeah, he's from Texas, right? Or he spent some time in Texas.
I don't even know.
And you're in Texas, so maybe anyway. All right, so that's what about Insta?
Insta, BD Henley.
BD Henley. What's the D for?
DeCessa, my maiden name.
Oh, DeCessa. Okay, I thought that was your middle name. I was like, say what?
No, maiden name. Sometimes I wonder if I should have stuck with it because it's definitely more. It's distinctive. That's for sure.
DeSessa?
DeSessa.
Blair DeSessa.
Yes.
Blair
Autocorrects
Henley.
to disease in Microsoft Word if you were
Nice.
curious.
Nice. What else is there?
I mean, I don't do a ton on Facebook. That's the only other one. But,
Who does?
But yeah, I'll be at tournaments this year.
And you're all over YouTube.
There is some stuff on YouTube, yes, but I'm really excited. I'm hoping to do more instruction videos this year.
Okay.
So that is what I'm excited about right now.
Can you fix Corey's backhand?
Oh,
You can't. You
You're
can't.
telling me now?
You
Okay.
can't.
Good,
It's not
good to
possible.
know. One-hander or two-hander?
I call him the Fugitive. You remember that movie
I do.
with Harrison Ford,
Yes.
the one-armed man?
Yes.
I called Corey's got a one-handed backhand, but he's got a one-armed backhand because his other arm just dangles.
He doesn't even use
like it's
it.
dead. It's incredible.
Interesting. I have a one-hander as well.
Nice.
So,
But it's
yeah.
probably pretty sweet though.
I
you played at
mean,
Rice for Pete's sakes.
It's worked out okay for me.
Nice. I'm partial to oneies because I am as well.
Oh, nice. Look at this.
You can't fix Corey's, I promise.
Okay.
You would have to take a sledgehammer to his upper arm and break it and rebuild him completely. It's bad.
Well, like I said, I look forward to meeting Corey.
We'll try to set that up. So check out Blair Henley wherever you can find her. Tennis videos, get some instruction. If you get better because of her YouTube videos, then
Tell me. Only if
tell
you get
her.
better.
And then really, I mean, listen, the average price for a lesson in Dallas is probably $80 an hour. So if you get better from one of her, send her $10. Something. I mean, come on. She's helping your game, and that's what's the most important thing here is actual playing tennis. So, all right, well, thanks again for coming in, and everybody out there, I promise you Corey will be back next week. I'm sorry, but Blair's busy. So, and until next time, thanks for joining the revolution.